everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Wednesday or happy hump day if you celebrate it. I hope you're enjoying your day. I hope you had a good day at work. I hope you have a safe travel back to your home. And I have 3 cases for you guys. And shout out to anybody who's rocking with me. Hey, Young Riaz, thank you for being one of the first people to come in. I appreciate you, truly appreciate you. So, y'all gonna have to excuse me. My energy levels are so low. As y'all know, I am fasting, and this is day 3, so it's starting to get a little hard. So just bear with me, okay? But we're gonna go through this because it's a good thing to do this, and I always do it every like 3 months. So just bear with me, okay? But we're gonna get through this. Hey, Joanne, how you doing? Good to see you, dear. Good to see you. Thank you so much for stopping by. I truly appreciate you. I really do. All right. So the 3 cases that I have for you today, the first one that I want to go over is when a supposedly alpha killer thinks that he's going to get away with unaliving someone, but he doesn't necessarily know that his I guess this is a significant other is actually still alive. So she's able to tell the tale. And we're going to review this case. Okay, so if you're coming in, just make sure you're hitting that like button, share this out to anybody who's interested in this content, and here we go.
I don't want to tell the daddy's story.
This is Valerie McDaniel. Police just entered her apartment in the middle of the night as her young daughter sleeps peacefully in her bedroom.
What's going on?
He wants to talk to you.
Police tell Valerie and her new boyfriend Leon that Valerie's ex-husband was found murdered in his car with a shotgun wound to his head.
Holy,
Might have been a robbery gone wrong.
are you okay, baby?
At first glance, Leon appears supportive of his new girlfriend, comforting her as she hears about the tragic news.
Holy, you're right, sweetie. Okay. Oh my God. I lost my father when I was young. This thing I've ever heard now.
But what Valerie doesn't know is her boyfriend hides a disturbing secret. Just 2 hours earlier, Leon received horrifying pictures of his ex-girlfriend on his phone. Pictures of his ex-girlfriend, tied to a chair, crying. Leon thinks the police don't know anything, but the truth is, the cops are one step ahead of him and have been plotting the perfect trap.
See if anybody knows anything.
Oh,
Maybe a bunch.
no, we've been here all night.
Right now we're going to reach your rights.
Me?
Maybe learn to remain silent.
It's early 2017. Valerie McDaniel lives in a 2-bedroom condo in River Oaks, an exclusive neighborhood often called the Beverly Hills of Houston, Texas. From her balcony, she enjoys sweeping views of the city, a luxury afforded to her by her successful veterinary practice.
She just poured her heart and soul into veterinary medicine. Just a really giving, caring individual. I looked up to her as a mentor and an inspiration. I would hope to be like her someday.
Although Valerie has a thriving career, her love life tells a different story. She recently went through a divorce after discovering her ex-husband was having an affair. Valerie now shares custody of their 6-year-old daughter.
She was just unhappy. There was a void that wasn't being filled.
As a single mom, she'd spent years focused on her daughter, her career, and simply keeping everything together. Then, she meets someone, Dr. Leon Jacob. Leon came from a world of privilege. His childhood was one of luxury, elite private schools, ski trips in the winter, and summers by the water in Maine. After college, Leon pursued medicine, attending medical school in the Caribbean.
I'm a very driven, type A, alpha personality male, but I have a heart of gold.
She was very much in love with him. She said it multiple times. I'm completely in love with him.
For Valerie, this relationship feels like a second chance at love, a fresh start. The pair seem perfect for each other, having both recently ended relationships. Valerie with her ex-husband, Mac, and Leon with his ex-girlfriend, Megan. Leon showers his new partner with love and attention, and Valerie soon falls for him. The couple wastes no time moving in together. Everything seems to be going well until, on March 10th, 2017, at 2:47 a.m., things take a dramatic turn. Police arrive at their apartment and their seemingly perfect world begins unraveling.
Subject here.
What's going on?
Police deliver devastating news. Valerie's ex-husband, has been found dead.
Might have been a robbery gone wrong. Just trying to see if anybody knows anything. Might be able to help us.
Okay, baby. We've been here all night.
When questioned, Leon claims to know nothing about the situation. He appears shocked and saddened by the news, but his reaction is entirely fake. Leon isn't telling the truth. He knows something the cops don't. In this moment, Leon is actually fixated on someone he can't let go of, someone he wants out of the picture, someone who he believes will soon be declared missing by her friends and family, his ex-girlfriend, Megan Varicus. But before we continue the story, we want to thank Aura for sponsoring this video. Unseen's mission is to bring the most powerful retelling of survival to light, and thanks to companies like Aura, we can keep bringing you more of these stories. If you've ever Googled your own name, you've probably found 1,000 miles away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Megan Varicus was living a normal life and had no idea she would soon cross paths with Leon, turning her whole world upside down. Before Leon walks into her life, Megan thrives in her role as the assistant general manager of a bustling hotel in downtown Pittsburgh. She's intelligent, hardworking, and grounded, a woman building a solid career with passion while maintaining strong ties to her community.
She's a very likable person. She's someone that you'd want to be friends with.
Megan.
So off the bat, so far for what they're telling, it just seemed like because this guy comes from a privileged background, he probably suffered from influenza. And I spoke of this on my channel before about influenza. That is people who have been brought up in a certain type of lifestyle. They've always been given what they want. They have never been told no. There has been no limits to what they can gain or get or anything of that sort. And they do that as a way of that's their life, like that is their life bubble, right? And then they try to use it in the courts as in this person can't necessarily be hard I guess suffer the same type of fate as another person committing it because this person has always lived this type of lifestyle. So this is what they only understand. And they tend to try to blame it on the parents who give that type of lifestyle. It haven't really necessarily worked. It was only that one case with that young teenage boy who that brung up the whole affluenza thing into the courts, right? But I have not seen any other case that has been successful, that depending on wherever your social status is, whether if you're at the lowest of the low or the highest of the high, that you deserve different type of treatment, even though it's the same type of case or incident, like an unaliving, a manslaughter. I haven't seen nobody else been able to use that. But this is what I'm actually getting from this case, that he might have been a narcissist. He might have been controlling, and probably why it led to him maybe doing that. That is my motive, and it's just an assumption of a motive, but that's what I'm getting from it so far. But let's go on.
Effortlessly draws people in. Her close-knit family, who lives nearby in Pittsburgh, is a central part of her life. They share an unbreakable bond built on love, trust, and unwavering support. However, one day, a new guest makes an appearance and introduces himself as Leon Jacob. Leon is a transplant surgeon at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center and is a long-term guest at the hotel where Megan works. He has an air of confidence about him, charming, direct, and self-assured. When he approaches Megan, his smile is disarming, and the conversation is magnetic. Megan can't help but feel drawn to him. After a few minutes of talking, Leon asks her out. On their first date, Leon is unlike anyone she's ever met. He gives her his full attention, showering her with compliments and treating her with care and kindness. To Megan, it feels like she's met someone truly extraordinary.
He was so focused on me anytime we went out.
Hey, Miss Jalen.
He definitely went out of his way to do things that were extravagant. A lot of times men don't put that much detail into things, and he did.
After spending months getting to know each other, Megan and Leon's connection grows stronger. Their relationship blossoms into something Megan has never experienced before, comfortable, exciting, and full of promise. Together, they enjoy their lives in Pittsburgh, excited about what the future might bring. But then, one day, Leon shares some unexpected news. He's been offered an incredible opportunity in his home state of Texas.
Leon said that he almost had a guaranteed job in Houston at Methodist Hospital, and he really wanted me to go to Houston with him. It was exciting.
Megan has everything in Pittsburgh, a career she's worked hard to build, her family, her friends, and the deep roots she's planted over the years. But with Leon offered an unmissable opportunity to complete his medical residency in Houston, everything changes. Leaving behind her entire life, she packs up and moves to Texas for him. It's not an easy decision, but Megan doesn't want to give up their potential future together or risk that Leon gives up on his dream of becoming a doctor. For Megan, it's a leap of faith, a choice to follow her heart, even if it means walking away from everything she's ever known.
I loved being with Leon. We had a nice life here. I got a job about 10 days after moving here. I'm starting to make new friends here. His mother had this pool, and on the weekends we spent time there, and his brother came over, and even though I left my family in Pittsburgh, I had this new family.
At first, everything is perfect. They easily settle into their new life. Megan adjusts well to Houston and her growing family after having an adopted puppy together. But soon after they settle in, things begin to change. Leon had claimed to have a secure job lined up, residency at a local hospital. However, as months go by, Megan notices that she's the only one working to pay the bills, while Leon spends most of his days at home, drinking and unemployed. Day after day, Megan goes to work, carrying the financial burden of their shared household, while Leon explains to her that he's still looking for a job.
So I understand the whole taking the leap of faith thing, right? And I'm not going to deny that that works for some people. That leap of faith thing was actually a great thing, right? But I would say now in this current climate, if this guy doesn't marry you, right? If you're not legally bind to this man, do not uproot and leave everything that you have, to go live with a potential husband, right? Just don't do it. I really don't think it's a good idea, because now look what happened. In this situation, this guy told you that he got a job and that he got a real good opportunity out there. He made her believe that it was already done and sealed. The job was offered to him and we need to move out here. And then now it comes to the process that he didn't even have a job, that nothing was actually given to him. He has to still look for it. And then now she's in a position where she has to hold him down. And it's not that that is necessarily a bad thing, because, holding down someone that is going to fulfill what they do, that, it happens. And and you have to make the decision to do that. But now she's put in a situation where she's in something that she didn't ask for. And I think that that's the problem, right? It's completely different if she thought that or she already knew that this person was looking for something. He's on under, hard times, and you decide to work with that. But if you given the person the perception that you are already solidified, and that's why one of the reasons what made her confident to move away from her family, give up her career, give up her good job and everything, because she thought that something was already solid, then that's a different story, right? That's a whole completely different story. And especially if you wasn't upfront and honest with her that it wasn't like that. You just said whatever you needed to say to convince her to move. That's sad. Hey, Flower, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. Nope, you didn't miss much. You did not miss much at all. Let's go on. So far, this guy, he met a woman. She was highly successful, had her own thing going on. Everything hit it off in the beginning. He convinced her to move with him to this particular state where he said he had a job, like he was actually given the job and all that. She gave up everything, moved with him, and I think now a couple months within moving with him, she's the only one paying the bills, and he's still looking for a job. So that's where we at right now. Hi, Michelle. How you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. Shout out to you, ma'am. I hope you're having a lovely Wednesday. Sheila, how you doing? Much love to you. Thank you for stopping by. I truly appreciate you. All right, let me be quiet. Let's the show go on.
Leon wasn't doing the job that he said he was here to do and that he trained for years to do.
Despite his repeated claims that he is actively pursuing a role at the hospital, nothing changes. Over time, it becomes clear that Leon's promises are not matching his actions. It's now January 12th, 2017. Around 6 p.m., Megan has just gotten off work after a grueling 10-hour shift. Tired, she arrives at the apartment she shares with Leon, but to her surprise, the place is a mess. Clothes and dishes scattered everywhere, nothing in order.
I said, well, you were here all day and this just doesn't seem very fair to me.
That's when everything changes. The man she thought she knew, the one who had once been so charming, vanishes in an instant. Leon's expression hardens and he begins yelling, calling her names she never expected to hear from him. Megan barely has time to react before he storms into the bedroom, pulling her clothes from the closet. He drags her belongings to the balcony and throws them outside. She stands frozen, trying to process what is happening as his rage continues to escalate. He then grabs a cup of tobacco spit and hurls it across the room at her, the contents splattering everywhere as he continues his tirade, berating her relentlessly. It's like he is someone else entirely, a side of him she has never seen before.
It was not who I thought he was.
Megan is beyond shocked. It's like staring at a stranger. In that moment, it becomes clear that she needs to leave him. She grabs her own bag and begins packing what's left. She has no plan, no destination, but she just knows she can't stay. Megan moves toward the door holding her bag and their dog, but Leon refuses to let her go, blocking her path. His hands come down on her, trying to prevent her from leaving. She struggles and screams, doing anything she can to be heard.
I was trying to scream and trying to make as much noise as possible so that the people downstairs would call the police.
Then, he strikes her across the face. Megan is stunned. This is survival, and she needs to escape. With everything she has, Megan fights back. She lands an elbow in Leon's side, forcing enough space to break free. Out the door, down the hall, she bolts to the car, clutching their dog in her arms. But Leon isn't far behind. He chases her down the driveway, shouting threats.
He's pulling on the car door, I'm pulling on the car door, and he was like, if you don't give me the dog, I'm gonna punch you in the window.
Leon manages to grab the dog, wrenching it from her arms. Megan tries desperately to grab the dog back, but it's too late. She needs to think fast before it escalates further. All she can do is escape. She speeds away, finally free, or so she thinks. Unsure where to go, Megan drives to a coworker, who is also a new friend, and arrives at her door in a panic.
Her face was blotchy, marks and things like that around. She started crying. I closed the door, broke out tissues. She looked afraid and in disbelief that something like this happened to her.
As they talk, Megan's phone buzzes with a never-ending stream of messages, all from Leon. His obsessive need to reach her is unrelenting.
It was just non-stop emails, phone calls.
In the days that follow, Megan tries her best to steer clear of Leon, but his overwhelming calls and texts don't stop. Soon, emails start flooding in from an account ominously named Leon Loves Megan. The escalation quickly results in him stalking her. As he starts showing up at her workplace, even spotting him following her around town. Even more distressingly, Megan discovers that Leon has drained most of the money from their shared bank account. And when she returns to the apartment to collect her belongings, every piece of furniture, every trace of her life there, is completely gone. Desperate and shaken, Megan turns to the police. She files for an emergency protective order and for assault charges, hoping this will protect her against Leon's growing obsession.
I did file criminal charges for assault on a family member. I did provide the police with photos I'd taken. I thought I saved myself from the situation by contacting the police, but it didn't stop him.
I think the longer that things went on, the more frantic and the scarier he got. Megan had every right to be scared for her life.
I felt like I couldn't get away from Leon and stop wasn't something that he could comprehend.
Leon's stalking becomes so intense that Megan's work even takes action. The hotel officially bans Leon from the property, but this doesn't stop him, as he even attempts to hide in the bushes outside her office.
We walk outside and see him standing there behind a bush like you're invisible. I just remember the first words coming out of my mouth were, "Do you know we can see you?"
Megan's coworker even calls the police to try and get him arrested.
The person is stalking my boss. So when we came out of work just now, he tried to duck down and then got in his car and tried to leave.
In mid-February 2017, Leon is arrested and officially charged with stalking.
Shout out to the co-workers not being a bystander and actually doing something and helping their fellow co-worker or their boss, as I heard the lady say that was her boss. Shout out to you, right? Because that is very bold, very, very bold what he did, right? And why would you, like, you know, I get it. There is some severe mentally deranged people out there. I get it, right? But it's just like to have the audacity to come to the place of her place of business and literally stalk her out in the parking lot. You think people don't see you? You think that she didn't let everybody know, hey, I have this situation going on when she had the emergency PPO place. If you see this guy, let me know or call the cops. It's just like, what did you really expect? You really expect people to allow you to grab her in broad daylight after leaving work? That's what you think that's really going to happen. I don't know if people watch too much TV or movies or whatever. No, I mean, you would hope that somebody would say something, and even if people don't necessarily want to get involved as in confronting that person, because I don't think nobody should confront anyone who's able to do something like that, but at least call the police, get the security guard involved. You know, that's literally the best that you can do, bare minimum, without, you know, putting yourself in danger. But this guy, he's giving off full-blown narcissist, a very dangerous one, right? Even though he's the one who threw all her stuff out of the house and pretty much gave her the idea that he wanted her to leave, right? You're worthless scum. I don't know why I even have you here. Get the hell up out of my house. She grabs a little bit of her clothes, grabs her dog, and left. And you didn't want her to leave. You didn't want her to leave. You tried to keep her captive, you know, keep her in the house. Then you went downstairs. You followed her, running after her when she's trying to get into a car. And then now you're doing all this stuff. Like, I don't know. And in my eyes, I just see somebody who's very controlling. Like, when I look at him, I see what I see within his eyes, he looks like a very controlling individual. No, don't mean no to him. And even if he'll say, oh, get the hell out of here, you're scum and I don't want you, his actions are completely different. He still feels that he has the right to you, even though he says that he don't want you and you're not worthy of him. It's the weirdest thing. But we see that in a lot of narcissists today, men and women, right? They'll say all these horrible things about you, but yet all they do is focus on you. They obsess you. They stalk you. They do anything to be around you. And it's not because they love you. It's not because they care about you. That's not what it is. It's a sense of control. And the way how they view the world is that I control everything within my bubble. So if I decide that you're in my bubble, I control you like the puppet master. I make you twig. I make you twerk. I make you move to the left. I make you move to the right. You don't get that option anymore. It's very dangerous. I'm glad that they definitely helped her out. Let's go on.
A felony offense.
I kind of had a sense of relief for the first time that I could just live normally, at least for a day or so.
But this victory will be unexpectedly short-lived. Unfortunately, Leon won't stay in prison for long awaiting trial, walking free on a $75,000 bond. But what Megan doesn't know is that Leon didn't pay his own bond. Someone named Valerie McDaniel did. It turns out that the whole time Leon has been harassing his ex Megan, he has, at the same time, started dating Valerie McDaniel. When he had met Valerie, the truth was that Leon's life had been unraveling. He was unemployed and reeling from his recent breakup with Megan. His family wouldn't support him, and without a job or steady income, he couldn't afford rent on his own. Valerie, recently divorced and in a nasty custody battle with her ex-husband, understood Leon's vendetta against his ex and covered her new boyfriend's hefty bond to get out of jail. But despite his newfound connection with Valerie and his arrest, Leon remains fixated on Megan. Leon has built his identity around being an ambitious, charming, and kind-hearted doctor, but the truth is far less glamorous. Though he pretends otherwise to Valerie, Megan, and everyone else, Leon has many skeletons in his closet. He has carefully hid his long history of domestic abuse, stalking, and violent charges against past partners, as well as other criminal offenses, all of which he weaseled out of using expensive lawyers and technicalities. He wasn't even a real surgeon. He had been kicked out of multiple residency programs for unprofessional, incompetent, and disrespectful conduct. And, after a failed lawsuit, was never officially licensed. A guilty verdict in Megan's case would guarantee he'd never work as a doctor in Texas or anywhere else. Leon's dream of practicing medicine is slipping through his fingers, and he will do anything to escape justice yet again. For Leon, Megan isn't just an ex-girlfriend or the one who got away. She is the one person standing between him and the life he thinks he deserves. In Leon's mind, if Megan were gone, the stalking and assault charges against him, the only thing stopping him from becoming a doctor, would disappear with her.
The longer these charges lingered, the more concerned that Leon was about his reputation.
It's now February 23rd, 2017. Leon's harassing texts and emails to Megan haven't stopped. Worse, she knows he's out on bail, but she doesn't know what he's capable of or what he's planning in secret. Leon decides to take Megan out once and for all. He gathers nearly everything he has, $5,000 in cash, 2 Rolex watches, and his laptop, and contacts a man who calls himself Zach, a former US soldier turned hitman. The two arrange to meet and discuss the plan. The location, Leon suggests a local Olive Garden in Houston, Texas. It's now March 7th, 2017. Leon arrives at the Olive Garden, but surprisingly, he's not alone. He's brought his new girlfriend, Valerie, who has her own request for Zach. Valerie's ex-husband shares custody of their daughter and had an affair during their marriage. Valerie claims he's been causing problems and asks Zach to handle him permanently. The hitman agrees, but there's a price, $10,000. He suggests staging her ex-husband's death as a robbery gone wrong. Valerie writes Mac's name and address on a napkin, hands it to Zach, and offers her wedding ring as a down payment. Leon then proposes a chilling method for killing Megan. First, a kidnapping, followed by a fatal dose of potassium chloride via injection. It's clean, it's quiet, and, in Leon's mind, it's foolproof. The deal is sealed, a double homicide murder for hire. The payment is made. Now, the clock is ticking. The hitman begins watching Megan's every move, waiting for the right moment to execute Leon's twisted plan. Though Megan knows Leon is a threat, she has no idea just how far he's willing to go or how close the danger truly is.
Leon Jacob seemed like a very driven person about this. And when a person's very driven and they've got a goal in mind and they won't stop till they reach it, it makes them extremely dangerous.
March 9th, 2017, 7:42 p.m., 2 days after the Olive Garden meetup, the hitman arrives at Leon and Valerie's apartment. He steps inside, his face expressionless as he delivers the news. It's done. Valerie's ex-husband is dead. As proof, the hitman provides photographs of the scene, grainy, yet clear enough to confirm the grim reality. The scene is staged to look like a robbery gone wrong. No loose ends, no suspicion will blow back on the couple. But the murder-for-hire scheme isn't done yet, and the plan to take out the next target is already in motion. Less than 3 hours later, at 10:30 p.m., in an abandoned warehouse outside of Houston, Megan sits on a chair with duct tape wrapped tightly around her mouth and feet. Leon's phone buzzes with photos of Megan in her current state.
I sent you something. Did you receive?
Yes, sir.
Well, right now, we got her. Yeah, she's gagged and tied up and everything, but she's not cooperating.
It doesn't matter. You gotta have to do it. It doesn't matter either way.
Just after midnight, the job is done. Or so Leon thinks. In fact, the truth is not what it seems. While Leon thinks he's pulled off the perfect crime against his ex, Megan and the police have actually been one step ahead of him all this time and constructed an elaborate plan to take him down. The man Leon hired to kidnap Megan, who he believed to be a professional killer, wasn't who he claimed to be. 2 weeks earlier, Leon thought he was hiring a hitman, Zach Azza, but in reality, Zach was quick to betray Leon and do the right thing by running to the police after learning how serious the murder plot really was. However, In order to prosecute Leon on Zach's claims, investigators have to hand prosecutors tangible evidence of Leon soliciting and following through.
Shout out to this ex-veteran who did the right thing and did not be an idiot and fall for that little bit of money to be taking someone's life. Shout out to him, okay? Because I think he kind of realized that, wait a minute, even what you're trying to pay me is not even worth what's going to happen to me in my life or my family's life if I get found out as unaliving these people. So let me go to the detectives and let them know your little plot. And then since she already had record of what he's been doing to her, right? The stalking, the harassment, the showing up at her place of business, the calling her nonstop, emailing her from different emails and all that stuff like that. So she had that already in the system with the courts. They was like, listen, since he was already plotting to unalive one guy and another guy, their exes, how about we need something concrete to get them on this attempted murder situation? And he played along, and I'm glad that he did. I'm glad that he really did. Seriously. Yeah, I'm glad he did. Hi, Jay. How you doing? Yeah, damn, all right. Yeah. Whew. Man. Hey, Lana, how are you? Yeah, like this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Wow. You know, he did. He actually got paid in advance, Jay. So unless he's going to turn that money over to the police, but he did get paid in advance. All right, let's hear what else they have to say.
Through with having Megan murdered and build an airtight case against him, prosecutors would face an uphill battle. Unlike direct acts of violence, murder-for-hire plots are notoriously difficult to prove, as often there is no physical evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no murder weapon. However, a full conviction of solicitation of capital murder in Texas is a first-degree felony with the possibility of life imprisonment. Investigators need to show very clearly not only that Leon truly wants Megan dead, but that he actively took steps, including payment, to make it happen, that for all intents and purposes, this was a successful murder for hire. Every detail matters. However, time is also of the essence. Given that Leon has made his murderous intentions clear, Megan's life is in very real danger as long as he walks free. To gather what they need, police work with the informant and fake hitman, Zach, who is willing to do whatever it takes to help police catch Leon and protect Megan's life. To lay their trap, police first have Zach call Leon multiple times to confirm details about the murder plot, recording every word. However, the recorded calls are just the beginning. Zach's cooperation allows police to gather critical evidence, but it will take meticulous planning and strategy to ensure Leon will be convicted.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing, buddy?
Hi, Pedro.
Hey, good.
How you
Hey,
doing?
listen, I'm gonna set up a meeting with you
sir.
tomorrow so we can finish this, okay?
Okay.
March 7, 2017. Police and Megan orchestrate the meetup between Zach and Leon at the Olive Garden. Leon has no idea absolutely everything about his secret meeting is being recorded through hidden cameras and microphones. Police are even stationed in disguise as civilians in case anything turns violent.
As soon as we pull in, I see Leon smoking a cigarette towards the entrance of the Olive Garden. He's dressed like somebody who just got off of work. He's wearing a button-up shirt. He did not seem like a typical criminal.
As the conversation continues, Leon details exactly what he wants to happen to Megan. His words, captured on audio, leave no ambiguity. Leon proposes a potassium chloride injection, describing it as an untraceable and easy method to kill someone. This chilling revelation demonstrates his intent, his willingness, and a clear plan for murder. To make matters worse for himself, he even seals the deal with a $5,000 cash payment. But the plot thickens. Valerie McDaniel, Leon's accomplice, has her own deadly request. She wants her ex-husband dead.
Are you asking me how I would do it? Take his wallet, take his phone. They'll think he was a robber.
No, the address is
Valerie then writes down her ex-husband's full name and address, handing over her wedding ring as an initial payment for the...
You know how the saying goes, right? Birds of a feather flock together. You know what I'm saying? water finds its own level. They are match made in heaven. They both want to take out their exes, right? They both have a vendetta. And even before, like before when they was talking about how she heard about what he told her about his ex and what she did and all that stuff like that, and that was the reason why she decided to take him in and hold him down. I was going to give her the benefit of the doubt that since he's a narcissist, that he probably didn't tell her the whole truth and that he fabricated it a little bit and, made it seem like she was only the bad guy and he didn't do anything wrong and he was a victim and all that stuff like that. But the simple fact that she wants to participate in this hit for hire type of scenario going on, no, ma'am, you're just like this individual. You're just like this individual, controlling, think that you're entitled to take someone's life or do things to them, can't get over the situation. You are exactly like this piece of shit. So as you see, I'm fair. It can be anybody, woman or man. Let's see. Leon said, yeah, Leon. Yeah. Hi, Lumix. How are you doing? Good to see you. All right, let's go on.
The hit. At this point, police have enough evidence to prove intent from both Leon and Valerie, but they know it's not necessarily enough to ensure a conviction. What if a jury finds it insufficient? That's when the investigators devise a secondary plan to build an even more airtight case. They will stage the murders too. Megan and the team decide to create fake crime scene photos, essentially allowing Leon and Valerie to think the murders they ordered really happened. They will then present this proof to Leon and Valerie in order to secure payment for the supposed murders and to get the pair's live reaction, solidifying their plot for murder in the eyes of a jury. The second phase of the operation begins with Valerie's ex-husband, Mac, meeting the Houston police in an abandoned parking lot near an old warehouse to stage his own murder.
He would be willing to do whatever we needed to stage his death.
Leon knew what dead bodies looked like because he had medical training. We had to make it look real.
For Mac's photos, investigators create a fake carjacking and have him pose fallen over his steering wheel. They do everything they can to make it look convincing, mimicking a gunshot wound to the head.
Those stakes were high because if Leon caught on that those photos were not real, our whole investigation was down the drain.
A few hours later, it's Megan's turn. The plan for her was to stage a kidnapping and then murder. In the abandoned warehouse, just outside Houston, Megan waits for the plan to be set in motion. As the fake hitman speaks to Leon on the phone, the police prepare for the most crucial part, the kidnapping photos. They have to look disturbingly real. If Leon suspects for even a second that the scene is staged, the entire operation and the case they have worked tirelessly to build will crumble.
Some people wanted to just duct tape her lips, and I said, no, we're gonna do this like we're real killers. This needs to look real, it needs to look legit.
They zip tied my arms and my legs. They wrapped my head up in duct tape. And at that point, I was just, it was awful. And I really thought, like, what if this really happened? What if I was really in this warehouse like this?
Tears were flowing, and she just broke down. You could see the emotional toll that it was taking.
The undercover officer, posing as the hitman, sends the photos to Leon. The images are designed to prove that Megan has been abducted, leaving Leon with one final opportunity to call off the hit and spare her life. But instead, Leon doubles down, giving the order to kill his ex-girlfriend. With Leon's intent confirmed, investigators move to the next phase. They need to deliver the news of Megan's death and collect the payment in person. This step is critical, not only to secure additional evidence through audio and video recordings, but also to build a case that leaves no room for doubt. Their goal is to ensure Leon will face the maximum sentence and that Megan will never have to look over her shoulder ever again.
Hello? Leon, we need to meet in person, not on the phone.
You're absolutely right, Miss Jalen. Because I don't think other people don't understand like that. The reason why it was so real for her, because she has been dealing with stalking, harassment. He he physically abused her. He was stalking her at her job, and she has to live a life where she has to look over her shoulder every single time. So when they staged that kidnapping, just think, look how far she had to go. She had to stage her own kidnapping and pretty much pretend that she lost her life just to actually get this person who really wants to kill her out off the streets, right? I don't think people see how that can really mess with somebody's psyche, right? And what people who are in this situation, whether it's men or women, what they're really actually going through, right? Because it is real. There are people who are really being kidnapped, right? Really being tied up, and horrible things being being done to them in the basement, in attics, in warehouses, and things of that sort. And then now to actually put that in, like, put that in reality, like, really actually, present it as something that can really happen, that can be a very traumatic situation for anyone, right? It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And people need to take stalking, harassment, and all that stuff, domestic violence, they need to take it a little bit more seriously.
Phone, yeah.
I worry about seeing in-person stuff because I worry about that I'm being set up here too.
Okay, well, you need to understand, from my side, I'm worrying about being over the phone. That's how people get caught on the phone.
The undercover agent and Leon agreed to meet at Valerie and Leon's condo. However, the condo poses significant risks.
If I needed to be rescued or if something went wrong, it would take some time for my extraction team to reach me. But I wasn't going to stop this investigation just because he refused to meet me somewhere in public.
All right. I'm here. Okay. Yeah, good.
From there, we go up the 7 floors and we get to the condo.
Bye, sweetie.
Valerie emerges from the back bedroom and she greets me.
Good to see you.
We'll just put the cell phones down and talk outside.
The undercover officer, Leon, and Valerie move to the balcony. The three stand facing each other as the officer pulls out the photographs. Carefully, Leon examines the staged photos, his expression unreadable.
And he studies it for a second or two. And then all of a sudden, he gets spooked. He immediately grabs my chest.
You are having fun.
It took me by surprise that I felt my safety was on the line. The danger was very real. If Leon figured out that I was a police officer, he could have attempted to push me off the balcony.
You mind showing me? Yeah, no problem.
So I turn it around on him and I say, "Are you wearing a wire?" And he stands up, lifts up his shirt to show me he's not wearing a wire. So at this point during the meeting, I'm kind of running on adrenaline. And then he proceeds to give me $1,800 in cash.
It's okay if I count it. 10, 1, 2, 3.
This is the final piece of the puzzle. It showed he committed the overt act of paying me to commit a murder.
6, 7, 8.
At this stage of the investigation, the police believe they have almost everything they need to prosecute Valerie and Leon. Still, there is one final step to ensure their case is airtight. Officers plan to visit Valerie and Leon's apartment and deliver a death notification. The entire interaction will be recorded on body cam footage, capturing their reactions. These raw, unguarded moments will serve as crucial evidence for the jury to charge Valerie and Leon with solicitation of capital murder.
What's going on?
He wants to talk to you.
I'm afraid we have some bad news. Your ex-husband's been right now, we're going to read you your rights. Both of them are being arrested. The solicitation of capital murder. Why? First person murder. You know, from the other side.
When officers arrive at Valerie's apartment, her ex-husband is also there, waiting outside. He has come to take custody of their young daughter. As Valerie stands in handcuffs, her ex carries their still sleeping daughter out of the apartment, right past her mother, who is now being escorted to jail.
Valerie looked broken at that exact moment. She hired a hitman to kill her ex-husband because she wanted full custody of her daughter. And at the end, her ex-husband got their daughter anyway.
Both Leon and Valerie are arrested. Leon, with his history of stalking charges, is held without bail from the moment of his arrest until his trial. For the officers, the prosecutors, and Megan, this is a huge relief. His first arrest and subsequent release on bond could have been deadly. Letting him post bond again isn't an option anyone is willing to risk.
In Harris County Court, veterinarian Dr. Valerie McDaniel stood before the judge to answer the charge of soliciting capital murder.
Valerie, however, has no criminal record and therefore is released on a $50,000 bond as she awaits trial. But just a week after her arrest, she makes a tragic and irreversible decision. 1 week after her arrest, Valerie McDaniel jumps from the 7th floor of her apartment building, ending her life. Her death shocks everyone involved in the case, leaving behind unanswered questions and a young daughter who will grow up without her mother. Leon Jacob faces trial for his actions alone.
After the charges are filed, there's still a lot more work to be done.
The amount of research, interviewing people, they went to great lengths to ensure that they had every detail possible for him to go away.
The prosecution builds their case around one central piece of evidence, the undercover recordings.
This case was going to rise and fall on the recordings because they're not very common that we come across somebody who is willing to pay somebody to kill somebody else.
The trial begins on March 20th, 2018. The courtroom is packed and everyone's eyes are on Leon. As the trial goes on, there is one person's testimony that is integral to the case.
Somebody was able to actually stand up to him, and it was Megan.
I wanted to do everything possible to make sure that he could never hurt anyone again. And as hard as it was to get up and testify, I knew that I had to. I wanted to look at Leon. I wanted to make sure he knew that I was still here and I was still alive, and he couldn't prevent me from speaking.
With closing arguments complete, the case goes to the jury. After weeks of trial, hearing Megan's personal testimony and reviewing all the evidence, on March 26, 2018, the jury returns a decision after only an hour and 15 minutes of deliberation. In the state of Texas, the jury also decides the defendant's punishment.
With the jury having found the defendant Leon Philip Jacob guilty of solicitation of capital murder, assesses punishment of confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for life, assess a fine in the amount of $10,000.
Leon Jacob will serve 30 years before he's eligible for parole. By then, he'll be over 70 years old.
I would never want him to be able to do this to somebody else, because if it wasn't me, if it wasn't Valerie, it's going to be somebody else. And that needs to stop.
I wanted the final say, his last day in court, to be me.
While you sit in jail, I hope you think of me, the girl that you called poor and uneducated. Because it's because of me you will be in prison for life. You destroyed me financially and took away my sense of security, but you can do that no more. Enjoy life in prison.
If one thing would have went wrong, I wouldn't be here. I can't express how thankful I am.
Megan bravely chose to stand up to Leon's abuse. She spoke out, worked with police, and cleverly outsmarted someone who thought he would never be stopped. Today, Megan continues to use her voice, speaking about her experiences, now volunteering at organizations against domestic violence. Megan shows that healing is possible and that even after tragedy, there is a life worth living.
I draw strength from the fact that he sits in jail every day. I wasn't gonna let him get away with this.
This is a case of Megan was an old
The bad things that Leon did, people were gonna find out about. He can't hurt anyone ever again.
2017.
Even after everything, I'm glad I ended up here. I'm not afraid anymore.
Yeah, that was a very deep one, right? Shout out to Megan. Shout out to Megan standing up for herself, not just taking it, lay it down. And I will definitely say, for somebody who also have dealt with a stalker, narcissist, and all those type of things, stand up for yourself and do the right thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that 30 years was enough. Truly, I think that person should have gotten life in prison. I think that's something that we might have to talk about, or states need to talk about that. Even attempted murder, outside of outside of the self-defense area, I think it should be life in prison. I think it should hold the same type of weight. But I understand why the law doesn't do that, because technically these people are not dead. They didn't lose their life. So that's why you didn't give them the full life imprisonment, like without parole. But still, just attempting to do it, especially he did capital murder. Like, it was full on intent. He was trying to be sneaky about it, everything. He paid for it, everything. I think that he should have got more years than that. We have seen cases before, other cases that I did weeks back. We have seen people get 100 years. We have seen young adults get 120 years, 60 years, and 70 years for things that was not as put together and literally planned and plotted from the beginning to the end as this guy did. And he only got 30 years with possibly getting parole. And I think that's also because by that time he'll be like 70, 71. They thinking that as an older man like that, he ain't going to be out here trying to do that. But no, I mean, a person like that who would do something like that, it doesn't matter if he if he's 70 or 71 years old. Have you ever heard of psycho strength? That don't go away. That don't go away at all. Let's see. Hey, Hazel, how you doing? Shout out to you. Shout out to you. Appreciate you. Let's see. Talak says, I am what happens when you try. Okay. Well, shout out to you, sir. Okay. And Hugo, as I said, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I appreciate everyone that's in the chat. Yes, Michelle, 30 years is just that's too little for me. Too little for me. He should definitely have gotten more. All right. So the next case that I have for you is when a son, here we go again. Children are doing the most lately, but this is an old case. I think this is also in 2017. But a son accidentally reveals horrible secrets what happened to his parents. And I want to review this with each other and see if he's involved or if he knows more, or pretty much just what happens. So make sure you're hitting this like button and share this out to anybody who likes these cases going forward. Okay, here we go.
I want to shut my parents. Please come. And I know that you're not a fucking me. My
In this emergency call, 20-year-old Seth Gonzalez struggled to convey the nightmare unfolding in his home, where his entire family had been viciously murdered. He recounted the chilling events he'd witnessed when authorities reached the scene.
There was definitely blood coming from that area, and somehow I assumed in my head that her heart's still beating somehow.
But while delivering the funeral eulogy, his odd performance of One Sweet Day unknowingly hinted at some horrifying secrets.
Sorry, I never told you all I wanted to say.
On July 10th, 2001, at 11:48 p.m., emergency responders received a frantic call from 6 Collins Street, North Ryde in Sydney, New South Wales. After arriving at the scene, the emergency dispatcher and paramedic were struck by the gruesome sight inside the house that sent chills down their spines. Teodoro Gonzalez, Seth's 46-year-old father, lay lifeless on the floor, bearing fatal stab wounds. His severely injured palm suggested a gruesome attempt to defend himself against his assailant by grasping the bare blade of the knife. His car keys were found tossed aside, covered in blood. His briefcase was left wide open, with papers scattered around as though someone had forcefully rifled through it in search of some crucial documents.
Now, forensic evidence later led to the fact that something had happened with the suitcase afterwards, after the killing, after Ted had been stabbed, after he died. So something had been, whether it's staged or some movement had occurred with the briefcase.
The area surrounding the briefcase was stained with partially dried blood and bloody footprints. Next to Teodoro's lifeless body, Seth knelt in utter distress, crying uncontrollably. He was so traumatized that authorities struggled to pull him to his feet.
Seth ran around the corner and I followed him. Seth's mother was on the floor. Seth jumped down and started pulling at his mother, calling out, "Mummy, mummy, mummy."
Following Seth to another corner of the house, they discovered his mother, 43-year-old Maria Loiva Gonzalez, in a horrific condition.
I noticed a large laceration on her left throat, at least 6 centimetres long, cut all the major vessels of the throat, but had been inflicted after she died because there was no bleeding from those vessels or wound at all. It was absolutely clean, just an open wound.
Her handbag was left in disarray on the floor next to Teodoro's body with bloodstains on it.
So a lot of people don't know that knife, like let's say unalivings or even attacks or even battery, right? Or assault with a knife as the weapon is usually done in personal situations, right? Most outside strangers and stuff like that are not really, how can I put it? A lot of the cases doesn't show that a lot of the attacks that are done by random people happens with knives. Most of those cases happens with weapons, like actual weapons, like guns. So a knife is a personal thing. You have to use a lot of force, right? You got to have some hatred towards that person, you know? And I think that that's what probably let the detectives start to say, let me look into this a little bit more and not look at the son as only a victim, probably start to look into it to see if he could possibly be a suspect. Because even how their body is in the house, right? But the briefcase is shambles. They still haven't mentioned that they have any other footprints. I'm waiting to hear if they're going to say that they picked up some other form of DNA, right? I'm waiting to hear those type of facts, or even what DNA or whose fingerprints is even on the weapons that are laying right next to the parents. But in totality, the whole scene looked like it was somebody who knew these individuals, knew his parents, that did this to him, and they had access to the house and everything in there. So we shall see. We shall see.
Items inside were scattered, again suggesting that someone had hastily searched through it for something. But the horrors seemed to have no end. Upstairs, the authorities discovered the lifeless body of Claudine Gonzalez, Seth's 18-year-old sister, bearing severe head trauma and stab wounds, lying in a pool of blood. On the wall, a bloody arc indicated that Claudine's head had impacted it before falling. There were also deep gouge marks on the wall, likely caused by a heavy object used to strike her head. Every inch of the house bore witness to the horrors that had unlocked within its walls.
Blood spilled onto the ceramic tile floor, and evidence or signs of a struggle there with movement of shoes in blood and some footprints or shoe prints in blood.
But what they discovered next was even more shocking, suggesting something far more sinister was at play.
Then I was taken downstairs to a hallway into the kitchen and written in graffiti across the wall with some words. That was starkly different to everything else. Like, you have 3 people murdered, then you've got cheap graffiti on a wall. It wasn't consistent with the other homicides I've attended previously.
The obvious hateful message, "F*** off Asians, KKK," scrawled on the wall indicated that it could be an anti-Asian hate crime. As they entered the kitchen, they discovered a broken window that suggested a possible break-in. Authorities then conducted a thorough search of the house for the murder weapons, but found nothing except for 2 knives missing from the kitchen knife block. Meanwhile, Seth was frantic, crying and repeatedly calling out for his cherished family members who, tragically, couldn't respond or console him.
My first concern was to deal with Seth. He had found 3 members of his family brutally murdered. I didn't go into the crime scene in the early stages. I firstly just wanted to deal with the victim and the victim's family and notify other people that were involved.
Authorities somehow managed to lead him out of the house of horrors and attempted to calm him down. Seth sat outside the house, devastated, as authorities carried on with their investigation. While they were meticulously searching for any clues about the attackers, Seth revealed a crucial piece of information: that he'd seen intruders and had chased them to a nearby road, but couldn't catch them. Authorities swiftly called in a dog squad to search the surrounding areas, particularly in the direction where Seth said he'd chased the intruders, but their search came up empty. At the same time, investigators were perplexed, realizing it was unlikely for Seth to have chased the perpetrators through the garage and down the street at such speed.
And we also carried out a time frame study to have one of the investigators go down the stairs, out through the internal door into the garage, lift the lift door for the external door of the garage, and by the time you did that, someone out the front gate, out that side gate, would have been long gone. But he maintained that he'd seen the figure of a person or two people running around the corner.
See, this is why, I know why they're lying, right? Because they don't want to get caught. But this is why a lot of these people who participate in these type of crimes don't make sense, and this is why they get caught, right? You try to pin it as some, hate crime, right? Hate crime that turned into a homicide. However, there's two things that you left out. If it was hate all Asians and whoever you was trying to make it, pin this on, why would they leave you alive? Why were they were afraid of you, but they wasn't afraid of your father. They wasn't afraid of your mother. They actually showed signs that it was a struggle that was going on in the house. So that means that those parents did not leave this lying down. They fought until the bitter end, right? So why would they run away when they saw you if they took out your whole entire family? Then on top of that, you said that they ran down the street. So you mean all that screaming that you was doing and nobody in your neighborhood didn't call 911 while you were screaming or even try to stop them or anything? And then you can't even go back to any neighbors who was probably peeking out of their window or trying to figure out what's all the commotion going on. You telling me nobody else can confirm that they saw somebody running from that house? And I know they're trying to think of things right then and there to make it seem believable, but you leave out those small details that does not make sense. And especially when they don't find nobody else's DNA on it, right? That's going to be a big, big thing if they find your DNA on the weapon. There's no other people's DNA but you and your family members in that house. You're the only one that's alive. There's no one that can confirm that anybody was running around down the street. It just is, as you see, it's messed up, it's messy. And yes, the more that they start to look into this scene or this incident, they're going to realize that a lot of things that the person who is the only one who's alive to tell the tale is not making sense. Okay? And that's how they get caught up. But let's go on.
Intriguing details also drew their attention.
What constantly reminded me was how clean and clinically clean the entire premises was, except for 3 slain people and the blood. And each of those persons, they hadn't been moved about. There'd been limited activity. It was surreal in some ways from other homicides, especially the mass killings. It was very different.
Based on the evidence, they assumed that the murders were likely the result of a robbery gone wrong. But others held a starkly different view that the assailants were merely searching for something.
Interesting upstairs in all of the bedroom, in Seth's room and in the spare bedroom, I remember that the doors of the cupboards were open. Everything inside the cupboards was neatly in place and folded. It actually looked like part of a shop in there. It was that neat, but nothing was out of place. So it seemed that At the time, we thought a long time about why the doors were open. You would have expected that everything would have been tipped out on the floor if people were actually looking for money or valuables.
To address the anti-Asian hate crime aspect, a specialized task force was formed.
I had a multidisciplined team in that because we had an Asian family involved in this incident. We had 2 members of the Asian crime squad to work on the investigation with us.
6 days following the murders, authorities brought Seth back to the residence to reenact the events that would soon prove pivotal in identifying the perpetrators.
Can I just get you to go through and somewhat detail what you did at that time?
I ran to him, I kneeled down, and an operator answered me straight away. And I said that I needed an ambulance.
Again, I realise it's very difficult for you. If you do want to suspend any time, just indicate that.
I noticed something in the living room in the couch here.
We can suspend temporarily and recommence when you feel right. Okay. Yeah, okay.
But there was definitely blood coming from that area. And somehow I assumed in my head that her heart's still beating somehow.
Seth asserted that his sister was still alive when he found her. He said that on July 10th, 2001, he'd been out of the city with his friend Sam DeCillo following the plans they'd made the night before. He picked Sam up around 8 p.m. and they headed to the Sydney Central Business District, where they dined at Planet Hollywood and visited a nearby arcade to play video games. Then, after dropping Sam off around 11:30 p.m., he returned to his home on Collins Street. As he entered the house, he was confronted with the horrific scene inside and called emergency services at 11:48 p.m. Sam later confirmed Seth's account of their activities that night. Additionally, Seth's neighbor, Shane Hanley, corroborated Seth's account. As the first responder, Shane noted that Seth appeared distraught during the phone call and acted desperately while he was inside the house. With no arrests made in the grisly murders, the vicious attackers remained at large. In an effort to seek justice, Seth also joined investigators by appearing on television, urging the killers to come forward and turn themselves in. He also appealed to the public, offering a reward of 100,000 Australian dollars for any information that would lead to their arrest.
But if you were to picture the 4 corners of the world, in my world we were the 4. My family, friends, and myself would like to ask anyone out there to please help us.
A few days later, on July 20th, during the joint family funeral, Seth acted very unexpectedly. While giving the eulogy, he sang Mariah Carey's One Sweet Day, a choice that many attendees, including his maternal aunt Emily Luna, found very strange.
Sorry, I never told you all I wanted to say, and I know eventually we'll be together one sweet day.
And then I thought to myself, oh my God, is he crazy or what? Honestly, I'm sorry to say this, but yeah, I just thought it's crazy.
The song's lyrics and Seth's emotionless delivery suggested an unsettling truth that couldn't be overlooked. However, detectives didn't view these factors as compelling enough to single him out, especially considering Seth's deep passion for singing and his determination to pursue a music career against his late parents' wishes. Detectives again interviewed Seth in hopes of identifying any potential suspects, and his revelations exposed baffling clues about a revenge plot. He showed detectives several hateful and threatening emails from a Philippine business rival of his father's, which suggested that the businessman might have orchestrated the murders out of hatred. Seth also mentioned a prior incident where their family had an altercation with some individuals who were tailgating their car.
The driver of the vehicle drove past them not far from their house and yelled out an anti-Asian comment before speeding away.
While detectives were working with the new clues, an unexpected event unfolded, foreshadowing an imminent threat to Seth. Within a few days, Seth started receiving threatening emails, which made it clear that the killer of his family was now targeting him. In response to these alarming messages, authorities ramped up their investigation to address the potential dangers facing Seth and advising him to move to a safer location with enhanced security. However, one aspect of Seth's story continued to perplex the detectives. He'd initially stated that his entire family had been shot, but no gunshot wounds were found on the bodies, nor were there any shells found at the crime scene. Detectives speculated that in his panic that night, Seth might have mistakenly interpreted the injuries as gunshot wounds. By then, detectives declared that they had still not ruled out any suspects in the murders, including Seth. The autopsy report revealed the harrowing nature of the deaths with some significant clues. The report indicated that Claudine's death resulted from a combination of neck compression, blunt force trauma likely inflicted by a baseball bat, and stab wounds to the abdomen. Mary's injuries indicated that she'd suffered multiple stab wounds, facial and neck lacerations, and a completely severed windpipe. But Teodoro's injuries seemed the most severe, consisting of numerous devastating stab wounds, with one wound piercing his right lung, another piercing his heart, and a third partially severing his spinal cord. The report revealed the most shocking finding to date, that the family had been killed over a span of 3 to 4 hours, and all the killings likely occurred between 4 to 8 p.m. on July 10, 2001. Following the new revelations, detectives sought to uncover all activities at or near the crime scene from 4 to 8 p.m. that day. Detectives then received an unsettling clue from Seth's aunt, Emily. She claimed that she, along with her son, had visited the Gonzalez house around 6 p.m. that evening, but found no one home.
And then I rang the bell again because I said maybe they just didn't hear it. And then again, there was no answer. And then I had a look on the, how would you call it, the bayside window next to the entrance door. And I was telling my son, oh, for a while I thought that was a man. It was like a shadow of a man wearing a hat, and a long coat.
The house was dark and unusually quiet, though she noticed some movement inside, and sensing something was off, she chose not to enter. She also observed Seth's car in the driveway at that time. As new clues emerged and suspicions grew around Seth, Emily's movements also came under scrutiny. Detectives began to question whether her visit at 6 p.m. was merely a coincidence or indicative of a more sinister motive. However, by that time, detectives dismissed the initial theory of a robbery leading to the murders. With the 3 to 4 hour time duration of the crimes, it seemed unlikely that thieves would stay inside the house that long, especially since nothing of value was missing.
I don't know what the motive was, but all I can say is that Mr. Gonzalez's wallet was still there, and there was quite a degree of cash in the wallet. So if robbery was a motive, I don't think there was any evidence for it in this particular case.
Detectives also investigated Teodoro's business rival in the Philippines, but found no connection to the murders. Additionally,
Yeah, first of all, that wasn't no robbery, okay? If there's nothing missing in the house, just a briefcase with papers all over the place, droplets of blood all over the place, and 3 dead bodies, and I guess somebody's head got put into the wall, the sister and stuff. That's not a robbery, right? And then didn't the son say that around the time when he came in, he was out with his friends at some mall playing video games and stuff like that? So did your friends come and pick you up? How did you get there? Did you bike there? Because obviously you left your car there. Your car was in the parking lot. So your car was in the parking lot the whole entire time. And then they said by the coroners was letting them know that all these people, everybody in your family, was unalive within a time frame of 3 to 4 hours, meaning that they all didn't just get slashed up and everything at once. That was a whole process before they were gone, right? And then all of a sudden you decide to call, you call 911 and stuff like that. So I want to know, did he get a ride to go play video games? Why did he leave his car? That's what I want to know. Let's see. Billy Moore says, I know this is a type of video. If you want to stay on this video, I get it. But have you been following Karen Reed? I live town over. What? Oh, I have not. Billy, thank you for letting me know. I will look into Karen Reed. That's a good one. Thank you so much. I'll talk about that. Thank you. And shout out to my brother No Cap Freezy. How you doing, bro? It's good to see you. Good to see you as always. Thank you so much for sharing the live stream. I really do appreciate it. You don't know how much I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Miss Jalen said, yeah, he messed up. He said pow pow. Yeah, he did. He did say that they got shot and there was no bullets. There's nothing there that shows them that they were shot. So why would you say that they were shot? I mean, I understand if he's under hysteria and there's so much blood all around. They gave him the possibility that that's why he made the mistake. But I think that that's a weird type of mistake, especially when you see knives that has blood, their blood on it right next to their bodies, but you say that they were shot. I think that that's odd. But let's go on.
Additionally, the threatening emails were not directly sent by the suspected businessman. But soon, detectives would uncover shocking discrepancies in Seth's stories, revealing a horrifying secret that no one could have ever imagined. Seth had claimed that blood was gushing from his sister's side and he'd attempted to staunch the flow using his hands. But this account contradicted the timeline and manner of her death. She'd already been deceased for several hours by the time he found her, which made his description of blood gushing from her side impossible.
Said that he gave CPR to her in an attempt to revive her. And it was only later on when the postmortems were conducted that they realised that Claudine would have been dead hours before. And there was no possibility that she was bleeding or any opportunity to revive her.
Also, by examining the clothing Seth wore that night, detectives discovered only faint smears of blood that also contradicted his initial claims. Most importantly, Seth's Aunt Emily had seen Seth's car around 6 p.m. in the house carport, which indicated that he was likely present nearby when the horrific events unfolded inside the house. With all these inconsistencies and unanswered questions mounting, when detectives interrogated Seth again, he concocted an alibi. He stated that at 6 p.m. he was waiting in his car before heading to Blacktown to meet a friend named Raph DeLeon. After being unable to find Raph's house, he returned home and spent time in his car planning to meet his other friend, Sam DeCillo, at 8 p.m. Seth explained that was why his car was seen at the carport at that time. But when detectives confronted him with the evidence that another witness had seen his car in the house carport between 4 to 5 p.m., he changed his alibi yet again. In this version, Seth claimed that he left his father's office before 4 p.m. that day and returned home but didn't enter. Then, leaving his car in the carport, he took a taxi from a service station to Chatswood, where he visited a brothel to be with an ex-worker. Afterward, he took a taxi back home and, again without entering the house, drove to Sam's place around 8 p.m. He explained that he didn't disclose this alibi earlier because he felt too embarrassed to admit that he'd been with an ex-worker. But soon, detectives found his latest story to be false as well, with contradicting evidence. Records indicated that the ex-worker Seth referred to was not on duty that day.
And he attempted to create some alibi evidence by trying to convince one of the women who worked in the brothel that he had been with her that night. And there were something like over 100 SMS messages from him to this worker at the brothel, attempting to convince her to support his alibi. Unbeknown to him, as it turned out, this worker was off that week.
The taxi driver also denied giving Seth a ride.
He also enlisted the help of a taxi driver by paying him $50 and said to him that, and if anyone asked where I was, please just tell them that you were giving me a lift to Chatswood. The taxi driver took that $50 thinking that he probably had a girlfriend that he was trying to lie for. He was very surprised when I came knocking on his door and told him it was for a triple murder. And he was quick to say that he'd never seen Seth before in his life.
With 2 consecutive false alibis, his whereabouts between 4 and 8 p.m. became a source of deep suspicion for the detectives. Though his stories didn't add up, significant leads would soon emerge to shed light on the truth. As detectives delved deeper, they discovered that Seth had visited the family accountant just days after the murders to inquire about his inheritance of approximately $10 million from the family estate.
Within a couple of days of the deaths, Seth had gone to see the family accountant to make inquiries about how large the estate was of his parents in Australia.
Hey, Paula. How are you? Good to see you. Don't tell me he unalived his family so he can get his inheritance early. Because that's what it seemed like. Outside of just the money situation, it doesn't seem like he really liked his family that much. But you unalive your family for $10 million? And then you try to blame everybody else? You try to turn it into a hate crime? Like, sir, come on now. Like, there's people who are really going through hate crimes. And you, wow, you are, oh my goodness. I'm flabbergasted. Sorry, guys. Let's go on.
And about how he could get access to some of it. Within a few weeks of the deaths, he'd gone to a Lexus dealer and placed an order for a Lexus sports car worth $175,000.
He'd informed the car dealership that he'd use his inheritance to finance the purchase. Furthermore, as a supposed crime victim, he had applied for a $15,000 Australian dollar compensation payout. Shortly after the tragedy, Seth had moved into a luxury apartment in Chatswood. He'd also traded in his parents' expensive cars and pawned his mother's jewelry to secure a substantial loan. However, Steph didn't stop there. He even told relatives that he was suffering from a critical brain tumor and solicited 190,000 Australian dollars from his grandmother, Amelita Clariades, in the Philippines for the supposed surgery, which she had refused to give. Detectives also learned from sources that Seth had received substantial sums from several television channels for giving interviews about his family massacre. Every piece of evidence indicated that rather than grieving the tragedy, Seth was solely focused on pursuing money and luxury.
Greed is all I can think of. Because after the incident, why would someone who just lost his family first go and see his dad's accountant a few days after the incident? Why would he drive his mom's sports car around and dress it up with new tires, new skirts, steering wheel, you know?
Yeah,
Detectives then meticulously reviewed every piece of collected evidence, including Seth's computer, and what they discovered linked Seth directly to the triple murder case.
Numerous searches had been done on his computer by him for ways of killing, and he had purchased some poison seeds and had used those seeds to make a poison liquid that was found in his bedroom, and that liquid had been used in an attempt to poison his mother.
He'd also ordered some deadly poisonous seeds through mail order just weeks prior to the murders. Notably, weeks before the murders, his mother had been hospitalized for treatment of food poisoning.
It was such a strong poison that in the United States it's categorized as a weapon of mass destruction. And the poison is so strong that just a small amount of it can kill literally hundreds or thousands of people.
But what detectives found interesting was Seth's cunning act of blaming others for his mother's food poisoning, playing the role of a caring son.
That Seth had sent a letter to a food company claiming that a product had been contaminated and people would die. With no doubts, he was creating a suspect already away from himself if his mother was to die from the poisons.
Detectives made another startling discovery when they found certain paints on the sleeve of Seth's jumper.
Then there was the fact that on his sleeve that he was wearing at the time, there was some paint It was identical to the paint that had been used to paint a message on the wall inside the house by the person who had supposedly broken into the house and killed all three of them.
Additionally, during another search, they discovered a hidden pair of size 7 running shoes in his room.
During the search of Seth's room, I noticed this shoebox on the floor of his cupboard. And that shoebox was of interest because of the shoe prints that had been developed during the examination by Detective Sergeant Gibbs.
Those footwear were used during the attack, as the crime scene footprints clearly matched it. With the overwhelming evidence against Seth, detectives concluded that he'd acted alone in the cruel killings of his 3 family members. By connecting all dots, detectives were able to reconstruct the chain of events that had transpired inside the Gonzalez house on July 10, 2001, between 4 and 8 p.m., explaining how Seth successfully killed 3 people by himself.
So working out that Claudine and Mrs. Gonzalez had lower body temperatures than Mr. Gonzalez gave us a clue, and I think an important clue, that their deaths were considerably earlier in the piece than Mr. Gonzalez.
When you look at the timings, that all 3 people were killed at different times. So if the picture emerged for me was this was a crime that was planned.
Seth had meticulously planned the cold-blooded killings after.
Yeah, this is really insane. This is really like doing something to my spirit. This is scary. Scary, right? Like that's crazy when you have to literally look over your shoulder in your own house. You know, this is a person that you gave your love to, you know what I'm saying? You gave them life, you fed them, you clothed them, you set up for their future and everything. And to just even think about that, that is also a possibility that you can have someone that you completely raised to know, love, and everything be turned into a complete stranger or killer and harm you, right? And I told you that time frame between 3 to 4 hours, that was going to show that these individuals did not get killed at the same time. They got killed separately. And it seemed that he was plotting to kill his mother before anyone. He tried to use her sickness by poisoning her. So he was trying to get money out of the companies, whatever that company that she was eating or buying their products. She was trying to get money, like a lawsuit on that, off of her death. Then the first person that he took out was his sister. He took out his sister upstairs. Mom is already weak because you've been poisoning her for weeks at that time. And then dad came through, tried to stop you. And that's why you had to go all ham on him, because remember, they said that dad had the most wounds on his body. He was hit in his chest, he was hit in his neck, and it was pulled. He was hit in his spinal. So that means dad was literally trying to fight him after he seen what happened with mom. And they didn't even know that sister upstairs was already gone. This is really, really, really sad. This is really, really sad. Oh my goodness. Paula said, I'm so glad I'm a broke old granny. Paula not playing. She said, don't come for me. I don't got nothing for you. Yeah. Sophia said, literally, how did they not see that? I noticed that. Yes, exactly. I think they was giving him the benefit of the doubt, Sophia, because you remember how I said people grieve differently, but everything that he did afterwards, going to try to make do on his inheritance, driving his mother's car, changing it up to his type of style, a sports car, him buying $100,000 car and telling them that his inheritance was going to pay for it. All the things that he did afterwards, that's not a sign of grief. That's never been considered a sign of grief, right? It was like he was congratulating himself. It's like he was rewarding himself by him going out and doing what he did with the money left behind. So that was I don't know. From there, I would totally agree with you. Yeah, if after seeing him doing that and acting like that, red flags would have went up. But just off of the fact of him singing, poorly, Mariah Carey, and the the song choice, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a suspect. But I just thought, from what I know, there was a lot of things that made it seem personal. Stab wounds, someone stabbing in a knife and stuff like that, that is a personal thing. It takes a lot of force and anger to stab someone like that. That's very, very, very personal, right? And most people who are just robbers and stuff like that, they're not doing that unless it's a life and death type of situation. But if they're just trying to rob, then everything in the house would have been robbed, right? But they didn't find nothing else that was stolen in the house, right? And then I said they didn't talk about footprints and fingerprints. They still haven't said anything about that, but I'm sure that they forensic came back and showed that there was no other footprints that was in the house. There was no other DNA outside of the 4 people that live in that house. I'm sure that that's what happened. But there was things like that threw me off. That threw me off, especially the whole I hate Asian trying to turn it into a hate crime. I thought that was weird, because if you said that you saw them and you quote unquote ran them off, if they hate Asians, that means they hate you too, right? This is your family. So why would they run off without getting rid of you? Why would they leave you to be there to tell the tale? It doesn't make any sense. So those are the things that, let me know that, yes, he was the suspect and he was the one who actually did this. And it's just sad all around. It's disgusting all around. All around. It's really just disgusting. Let's see. Hi, Maya. How you doing? Thank you for stopping by. I truly appreciate you. Thank you. Hazel said, reminds me of the same actions the Mendez brothers did. They went on a... Yeah. It does remind me a little bit. It does. Yes, Flower, it was a knife. And it's funny because he told the police officers that they got bullet holes. He said that they were shot. There was no gun or anything, no casings or anything anywhere. Hi, Larry. This is a very, very old case. This happened in 2001 in Australia. Let's see. Moa says, so sad they take care of him and give him a good life. He never appreciated it. Yeah, it's really sad. It really is. I'm sad that he would do something like that. Hi, Hassie. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and thank you for subbing. And you as well, Mia. Thank you. All right, let's finish up this since we now know he is the suspect.
His initial attempt to poison his family failed. On July 10th, 2001, at approximately 4 p.m., Seth left the family law firm where he worked part-time and made his way home. At around 4:30 p.m., armed with a baseball bat from his vehicle and 2 knives from the kitchen, he entered Claudine's bedroom and savagely attacked and murdered her while she was engrossed in her studies. Seth then patiently waited for his next prey, his mother, Mary, who worked with Teodoro at his law firm. At 5:30 p.m., as Mary entered the house, Seth ambushed her, viciously stabbing and slashing her neck with the knife, giving her no time to even set down her handbag or remove her shoes. He then waited for his final target, his father Teodoro, to return home. But at approximately 6 p.m., coincidentally when his Aunt Emily arrived, he kept the room dark and ignored her knock on the door. Shortly after, at around 6:50 p.m., as Teodoro stepped inside the house, Seth attacked and killed him in a similarly brutal manner. After murdering his entire family, Seth disposed of the weapons, his clothing, and the size 7 running shoes he'd worn during the attacks. The murder weapons were never found. He then took a shower, changed his clothes, and cleaned up some blood from the floor. Then, to stage the scene as a robbery, he scoured through his mother's handbag, his father's briefcase, and several other items, and deliberately broke the kitchen window.
Forensic tests later showed that fly screen was probably ripped, as opposed to, and probably not cut in its actually location. It was probably taken off and cut later.
And it was explained by the examiners that also wasn't consistent with the normal method of entry into a premises, a forced entry through a break and enter.
He then spray painted those hateful words on the wall of the house to deceive investigators into thinking his family had been victims of a hate crime. To further solidify his alibi, he spent the next few hours from 8 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. with his friend Sam. So far, it had become evident that since the beginning, Seth had been misleading the investigators. He'd even gone so far as to create fake murder threats by sending him self-threatening emails and fabricating a false story about Teodoro's business rival by creating fictitious emails under his name. By that point, the motive behind Seth's strange choice to sing One Sweet Day at the family funeral became strikingly clear. While it's up for interpretation, the lyric, "Sorry, I never told you all I wanted to say, and now it's too late to hold you," seemed to reflect Seth's dark secret metaphorically. It was as if he was seeking forgiveness for his actions against them. The song could be the earliest crucial clue that Seth had left behind, one that detectives had overlooked. Detectives then scrutinized Seth's background to grasp the dark psychological factors that had driven him to commit such heinous murders. It was found that Seth was a pathological liar who deceived not only his family and the detectives, but everyone around him. He'd often falsely claimed to be a successful businessman, model, and singer, and even went so far as to create a fraudulent fan website for himself. His desperate lifestyle reflected a life filled with lavishness, surrounded by friends, nights out, and expensive party cultures. He aspired to enjoy a luxurious life funded by his parents without making any effort of his own. But his parents stood as the sole obstacle to his fantasy world. However, there had also been some friction in the family from early on. Seth and his sister Claudine were raised in Baguio, Benguet, Philippines by their strict parents. But Seth's childhood was marked by shame and embarrassment as his mother frequently disclosed his bedwetting habits to others. Their father, Teodoro, was a lawyer, but after the devastating 1990 Luzon earthquake destroyed their home and business, the family emigrated to Australia and settled down in Sydney, New South Wales. By the late 1990s, Teodoro requalified as a lawyer and established a successful law firm specializing in immigration. The affluent Gonzalez family seemed tightly bonded, with devoted Catholic parents who held high aspirations and expectations for their children. Specifically, they had high hopes for their son Seth, expecting him to excel academically and pursue a career in medicine or law, leaving behind his passion for music. But the goal seemed unattainable for him. After completing his studies in Parramatta Marist High School, Gonzalez enrolled in medical science at the University of New South Wales, but left after 2 years due to his poor academic performance. At the time of the murders, he was enrolled in a Bachelor of Arts program at Macquarie University, but he continued to struggle academically. So he took on a part-time job as a paralegal at his father's law firm, but he often faced criticism from his parents, who continually questioned his capabilities. Facing the threat of expulsion, Seth even attempted to hide his failures by altering his grades.
After the tragedy, we used to get the mails from the mailbox, and we got his grades there that he failed. Maybe he knew it beforehand that he already failed.
When his sister exposed the deception to their parents, they threatened to revoke some of his privileges, including the access to his favorite green Ford Fiesta. Weeks before the murder, Seth had a heated argument with his mother over a girlfriend she disapproved of, during which she warned him that he could be disinherited. All of this indicated that Seth's desire to inherit the family's $10 million in assets, along with his ego and resentment towards strict parenting, served as the driving force behind the murders. After over a year of deception and fabricated stories, Seth was finally arrested on June 13, 2002. He faced 3 counts of murder and 1 count of threatening product contamination. He was held in custody at Silverwater Correctional Center without bail.
Correctly.
Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Seth pleaded not guilty. During the trial, his attorney argued that Seth was mentally ill, citing his childhood trauma from the devastating earthquake in the Philippines. It was also claimed that Seth had been dealing with suicidal thoughts and depression for 6 months before the murders. However, Justice Bruce James determined that the motive was financial gain and dismissed the claims of mental illness. He noted that the murders were among the most atrocious cases of murder under common law. On September 17, 2004, Seth was found guilty on all counts and was sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences without any possibility of parole.
I think justice has been done, but it would have been easier to accept if it were a different person. It's just so hard to accept.
I guess it's a relief to any investigator to know that your investigation has been thorough, the evidence has been placed before the court, and a jury of his peers have found him guilty on 3 counts of murder. And they didn't take very long to arrive at that decision. And that was a relief for the investigators and the family.
Seth is now serving his sentence in maximum security at Goulburn Correctional Centre in New South Wales. Although the Gonzalez family received justice, the community would never forget how a devoted father risked his life to save his little son, who ultimately went on to ruthlessly kill him and the rest of the family.
He had his leg pinned under a beam, and his father, out the front of the hotel, seeing his son was missing, actually crawled through the rubble and the dust and the debris to rescue his son.
In September 2021, Seth participated in an interview from Lithgow Correctional Centre where, shockingly, he expressed no genuine remorse for his actions.
I look back at how I was 20 years ago. You know, I'll say myself that I was a foolish, dumb kid who did a lot of silly things. That's not to make any excuses. That's just a fact. You know, but it comes down to this. When someone goes through a tragedy like that, what's the textbook way for someone to react? And even looking back now, I don't think I would have done anything differently because of my age and what I went through. You know, I understandably some of the things that I did may have, you know, made me look irrational. But again, I look back at that and think, how would someone react in that situation? What's the rational way for someone to react when they go through something like that? And so, I guess I could say I forgive my young self for whatever I did in the past, because, you know, what's the textbook way? What's the right way for someone to act in that situation?
He continued to maintain his innocence, insisting that he was wrongfully convicted due to tampered evidence at his trial. His legal team claimed that the spray paint found on his jumper did not match the paint at the crime scene, and all the killings happened as late as 10 p.m. while Seth was outside the house. However, Seth remained optimistic about clearing his name and being released from jail soon. If Seth could ever prove his wrongful conviction, it would be considered one of the most shocking miscarriages of justice in history. Before we conclude, we extend our heartfelt condolences to the relatives of the Gonzalez family and their loved ones. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe that Seth was wrongfully convicted? Do you think he'll ever be able to prove his innocence in court? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more such episodes.
That was a hard one. The nerve of this disgusting human being. He doesn't even care that he unalived his family 20 years later, and he's still like, well, what did you expect for me to do? And I forgive my old self, because if you was in that situation, what would you do? Sir, like, are you kidding me? Like, you had no reason to kill your family members, okay? None. You was messing up in school. You know, you come from a family that have a strict culture about education. And if you're not going to be educated and make money with your mind, you better go and put that work in, okay? That's just the culture. You're not the only culture that has that. Everybody culture has that. You either going to have to be smart with your brains, or you better be good with your hands. But you ain't going to just sit up here and live a free life. You're not going to do that. It is what it is. That is no reason for you to kill your parents, okay? And then just to hear the story that when that earthquake happened in their homeland, the one you hurt the most, the one that you stabbed the most and inflicted the most pain was your father, and your father went in there into the rubble to go get your ass. Can you say you are the most ungrateful piece of shit I have ever, one of them, because I have heard many, but you are one of the the most ungrateful piece of shit that I had to literally listen to case about. And for you to not even have no remorse, like even now, you apologizing to your young self. You have not even apologized to your family, your community that you affected. The simple fact that you try to blame another family within your community as doing it, the fact that you try to make it a hate crime to blame other people that's not even in your community that's doing it, like everybody is as everybody else's fault that you didn't get what you want. It's everybody else's fault that made you kill your family. Like, I'm just disgusted. I'm truly disgusted. That just really just like, ooh, like you are so ungrateful. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, sir. I'm sure you're really lucky that you're literally living your life in prison, because if your family members in the Philippines would get a hold of you, this would turn out a different way. All right, this would go left. They would actually deal with you. So this is crazy. Okay, so I have one more case for you guys, and then I'm going to definitely let your good folks go. So please make sure you're hitting the like button and sharing out to anyone who's interested. And later on, if you have other cases like Billy told me to look into Karen Reed, which I am. If you have other cases that you want me to go over, just drop it in the comment section later on, okay? All right. So the last case I have for you guys is about a Craigslist ad. A Craigslist ad leads to a horrific murder. And I wanted to review this with you. So here we go.
What you're about to hear is an excerpt from the criminal trial that was held to prosecute the murderer of Heidi Bernadzikowski.
Now, Steve, you've heard through testimony that you arranged for Heidi's murder via the internet. Did you do that?
Not at all. Not at all. I didn't have anything at all to do with Heidi's murder.
Why are you testifying?
I'm testifying because I want my family and friends, and I want Heidi's family and friends to know the truth.
The person you just heard testifying is a man named Stephen Cook. In July of 1998, Heidi Bernadzikowski met Stephen at a local pool club. The two hit it off to the point that Heidi went home with him that night. After living in a strict household with her parents for most of her life, Steve was essentially her knight in shining armor. And within days of meeting, the two moved in together. Let's fast forward to April 20th, 2000. After laying the foundation of their relationship for the past 2 years, the couple was ready to take things to the next level. They had even set up life insurance policies for themselves and were discussing plans of a summer wedding in Las Vegas. Steve had just finished his part-time shift at Lowe's and picked up Heidi from her downtown job as a receptionist. He then dropped her off at home at around 5:45 p.m. He went back out to run some errands and then arrived home at about 8 p.m. Moments later, this phone call was received by the Baltimore County Police Department.
Baltimore County 911.
My girlfriend's been murdered.
Did you just find her?
Right now.
Did you just find her that way, sir?
Yeah.
What happened? Was she shot?
No, she's cut. Her throat's cut.
You don't have any idea how long she's been that way?
No. Just send somebody.
What's your last name, sir?
Oh, my God. Cook, are you sending somebody?
Yes, I am, okay?
Just send somebody.
I'm going to. Just stay with me, okay?
Oh, my God, I can't stay with you. I gotta go to...
Is there a weapon near her?
No. Are you sending somebody?
Yes, they're on the way, sir.
All right,
okay?
all right.
Now, I want you to stay with me.
No, I can't stay with you. I gotta go with her.
When the police arrived at the residence, they stumbled upon a gruesome crime scene. Heidi had been strangled and her throat was cut. She had bled out so much that the blood had seeped through the floor and into the basement. Steve was holding her in his arms, crying uncontrollably. The police secured the scene and began investigating the rest of the apartment. The first pieces of evidence that they noted included Heidi's purse belongings dumped onto the floor beside her and a number 1 drawn on the wall with her lipstick. Looking at the disarrayed state of the other rooms, investigators also considered the possibility that this was a botched robbery. However, even though jewelry boxes and drawers were ajar, nothing of value seemed to be missing from the house. Heidi's body was taken up to the medical examiner's office.
A botched robbery? What? but had enough time to write number 1 on her wall with her lipstick? I doubt it. Let's go on.
Office for an autopsy where her fingernails were clipped and DNA was tested. In cases where there may have been a struggle leading up to the victim's death, fingernail clippings can be a crucial part of the investigation. The victim could have scratched the assailant or otherwise acted so that a foreign material was deposited underneath her nails. While Heidi did in fact have trace amounts of a male DNA underneath her fingernails, her own DNA was also found, and they were not able to separate the two DNA profiles in order to accurately identify a suspect. Meanwhile, Steve was brought down to the police station where they captured these photos. He claimed that the blood on his clothes was from performing CPR before calling the
I also want to say, just in case if he is the actual suspect that they're looking for, in that way he was trying to be smart by holding his victim in his hand, because then if his DNA is already on her, right, and they see him at the crime with the DNA on her, and he's positioned himself as someone that's trying to help her, then they're not going to be looking at it as he's the one who actually did it, right? Because his DNA is all around him. So even when they look at the neck, right, and with strangulation, his DNA is going to be there. He's holding her like a baby and everything. Like, his DNA is going to be all over her body. Her blood is all over his body. So that's a way to try to have them think that it's somewhere else. Like, you need to look somewhere else because, look, I was trying to save her. Because usually the easiest thing when you find opposite DNA on someone, then you go looking for who DNA is that, especially if it's in the police system already. But let's go on.
Police and holding Heidi after. During his questioning, Steve gave a detailed account of his afternoon leading up to the discovery of Heidi's body. As we previously mentioned in less detail, at 5:45 p.m., Steve dropped Heidi off at home after work as she really needed to use the bathroom. He then left to run some errands on his own. While he was out, he got his hair cut and his oil changed. He also went to Home Depot to get supplies to help fix his sister's plumbing. He then returned home at 8 p.m. and found Heidi's body. This timeline checked out since Steve had all of the receipts to prove it. Also on his side was surveillance footage along his route that captured him several times. However, Steve did provide some significant information. Leading up to Heidi's murder, there were a couple of suspicious incidents. The first incident was weeks earlier. Someone had come to Heidi's home, apparently interested in starting a neighborhood watch program. However, Heidi did not recognize this man from the neighborhood. She was slightly unsettled by this interaction, so she told her co-workers at the office about it and described the man as a large, either light-skinned black male or dark-skinned white male, with black hair and a tattoo on his left arm. She even drew the tattoo on a piece of paper. The second incident was just days before her murder. There were scratches around the basement door lock, as if somebody was tampering with it to gain entry. Steve immediately took action and went to the rental agency demanding that they changed the locks. There was one more thing that caught the investigators' attention. During Steve's questioning, they found out about his and Heidi's recently filed life insurance policies. What really piqued their interest was the amount. $900,000 on Steve and $700,000 on Heidi. Steve didn't seem to think that this was significant to the investigation, but the detectives thought otherwise. However, this wasn't damning enough to warrant an arrest, so they let Steve leave and kept him on their radar while they continued their investigation. Over the next few weeks, police interviewed about 100 people, trying to find that mysterious suspect that Heidi spoke with at her front door. While there was one arrest made of a potential suspect, the charges were dropped due to a lack of evidence. At this point, the investigators came to a standstill, not for weeks or months, but for 11 years. This is because there was no forensic evidence to tie any particular person to Heidi's murder. In 2004, Heidi's parents sued Steve under the Slayer's Rule for the $700,000 life insurance payout. The Slayer's Rule prohibits anyone who intentionally caused the death of the insured to collect.
Now that is very important and alarming information that they're saying right now. The parents wanted to make sure that Steve do not get that money from that joint life insurance, because even within them, they believe that Steve has something to do with their daughter's death. especially that you went and got that life insurance policy almost a week before her supposed unaliving, right? Then you was tampering with the doggone door, you broke it, and then you said that you went and got the maintenance to fix it, but you didn't say nobody in this neighborhood said that somebody was at your door tampering it, or some random person. And there was only one person that came who was asking about do you want to start a cop watch situation that they didn't know lived in this community. Like, I'm sorry, a lot of this stuff points to Steve from the beginning. They should have did more due diligence on it, and it's sad that it's 11 years that case had to go cold before they had to bring it up again because they got some newfound evidence. But to me personally, it led up to Steve being the number one suspect from the beginning, and how everything played out. And like I said, that whole holding your victim and stuff is because if you saying that you was out and about and doing whatever, right, and then they find that your DNA is on that person, but you said that you was in another place at another time, that's automatically grounds for you're the suspect they're looking for. He tries to get out of it by holding his own victim and making sure that they see him, the detectives and the cops see him with his DNA on the victim. But let's go on.
Life insurance benefits. The civil action was settled out of court when Cook agreed to pay the plaintiffs $575,000, about 10 minutes before he was meant to testify. Detectives working on the murder case considered the settlement an admission of guilt. Regardless, Steve seemed to move on over the years, getting married to a new woman and starting a family while working for the government in Veterans Affairs. Over the 11 years that this case had gone cold, advancements in DNA technology allowed detectives to reopen a myriad of cold cases. One of those cases happened to be Heidi's, thanks to her fingernail clippings. After running the male DNA through their database, detectives got a hit. A man from Colorado, a state that is over 1,500 miles away from Baltimore, named Alexander Bennett. The sheer distance from the crime scene made detectives doubtful that this was their guy, but they called Colorado authorities, and the description that the clerk gave of Alexander Bennett matched Heidi's description of the suspicious man who came to her door. Either a light-skinned black man or a dark-skinned Caucasian man with black hair and a tattoo on his left arm. However, for this to truly be their guy, they had to somehow place Alexander Bennett from Colorado in Baltimore at the time of Heidi's murder 11 years earlier. The detectives decided to search an internal Maryland database that reveals information about past traffic stops and discovered another hit by typing in Alexander Bennett's name. Apparently, Alex was found walking on the side of the highway in Baltimore, but the only information that was logged during this stop was his date of birth. Even though this was enough to convince the detectives of Alex's whereabouts at the time of Heidi's death, this tidbit of information wasn't sufficient for the state's attorneys. So, their next big option was to go straight to the source. The detectives packed their bags and took a trip to Colorado to meet with Alex.
Alexander, right? Mm-hmm. I'm Gary Childs. How you doing?
According to Alex, he had plans to go to a concert with some friends, but at some point he was abandoned and spent the next month or so living on the streets of Baltimore. He couldn't recall any other information from this time.
I tell you, that's strange.
That's why it is strange.
Real strange. I have not to remember anybody you stayed with or hooked up with.
Keeping things vague wasn't working out for the detectives due to Alex's failing memory, so they finally got down to brass tacks.
This girl's fingernails were taken at the time of her death. Mm-hmm. And under their fingernails is your DNA. Now, there's no denying it.
Alex rebutted this confidently, saying that he could explain why his DNA was found under Heidi's fingernails. He recalled an incident that happened during his time in Baltimore. While waiting at a bus stop one day, a woman randomly came up to him and started attacking him, clawing at his face.
I got kind of scared because, I was trying to fight back, and I think I hurt her, I'm not sure.
The detective then pulls out pictures of multiple different women, with a picture of Heidi included. With Alex having full recollection of his bus stop story, the detectives are hoping that he will recognize Heidi's picture out of all of them. And that is exactly what he does.
And also, too, kind of looks like her.
Do you have any tattoos on your left arm?
Yeah.
Can I see it? For you to have been in Baltimore at the exact time this occurs, and for your DNA to be there, and for this tattoo to be on your arm, the exact location that the victim describes it as being, and actually drew it. I mean, that's just a lot of coincidences.
That's a profound thing, so, that's why I'm concerned.
Well, it really should be. I'm concerned.
Am I being, charged with anything right now?
Well, you're not charged with it right now, but I'm telling you, things are not going good.
I've given you all the explanation. I've told you everything, and like I said, if we're done here, I have a lot of stuff to do today.
Unfortunately, the detectives couldn't get a confession out of Alex.
Definitely a big plot twist, isn't it, Paula? Isn't it? But I'm just still trying to understand why it took 11 years. They been clipped the lady's fingernails, right? And they said that it was another man's DNA under it, but they didn't identify it. So that means that this guy wasn't under he wasn't in their system, right? It seemed possibly, going off of what's happening right now, it seems that he was a homeless guy at that time and he was in need. He did what he did, and then he left the town. And since he was never convicted of anything in that town, right? They didn't have no DNA on him to trace him. That's what it looks like. But even in that is crazy, because look how long he was able, if he's the suspect, look how long he was able to live his life, pretend to be this upstanding person, go to church every Sunday and everything, and you took this lady's life. That's scary. It's just scary when you really think about it. Oh my
Alex, but he did suggest that the detectives speak to a character witness, a man named Grant Lewis. Grant Lewis was a longtime friend of Alex's, and 9 years earlier in 2003, the two were even accomplices in another crime. They had devised a plan to steal Alex's roommate's car by getting him arrested. The plan was to call in a threat to the Colorado courthouse. They even went as far as making real explosives and then tried to make it look like Alex's roommate was working on these explosives inside the courthouse. They then uploaded documents related to how this device was built to his computer to help ensure his arrest. While he was in prison, that is when they planned to steal his car. The roommate was arrested, but the detective eventually played the 911 call for him to hear, and he immediately recognized Grant's voice. Alex and Grant confessed to everything once they were confronted by law enforcement, and they were ultimately sent to prison to carry out their sentences. Anyway, detectives were able to get Grant in the interrogation room to question him. Unfortunately, Grant seemed to prevaricate when questioned about Alex and his...
Shout out to you, Melissa. Good to see you. Thank you for stopping by. She said there's not a national database, it's state by state. Well, there is a database, but that's why it's important for local police to speak with other local police, right? Because whatever DNA and wherever you get booked at in county and stuff, they're actually holding it. And even sometimes those departments have to reach out to the other local department to get that information, right? So this happened, I think the incident that we're talking about happened in Maryland, but it seems that this guy's from Colorado. I'm wondering how he got to Maryland in the first place. I don't know. This is becoming a real twist, a real twist. Like, I wasn't expecting 2 more other suspects to come out after 11 years of this case going cold. This is getting really crazy. Let's go on.
his time in Baltimore. And since he wasn't under arrest, he was able to walk out without further questioning. Luckily for the detectives, they were able to detain Grant and bring him back in for more questioning due to some outstanding petty crime charges.
I think you don't want to tell me certain things because you don't want to hurt a friend of yours. And what I'm trying to explain to you is nothing you say hurt him because what's done is done.
Eventually, the pressure got to Grant, and he revealed a drunk conversation that he had with Alex down by a river one night.
He said, I don't know. It's over now. No. Then he said that they think someone's dead. I think that's how he said it. They think someone's dead. And then he said I knife for someone.
This admission was the tipping point needed to finally charge and arrest Alex. It wasn't long before Alex was extradited to Maryland, where he would go to trial. 2 years later, the trial finally began, with Grant Lewis as a key witness for the prosecution. One of the detectives even picked him up from his hotel to have breakfast with him before his testimony. However, it was at that moment that Alex's attorneys reached out to the detectives and told them that Alex was ready to talk after having a heart-to-heart with his mother over the phone. She had told Alex that if he did do this crime, now was the time to confess and Jesus would forgive him of his sins. The detectives rushed Grant back to the hotel before heading to the courthouse to speak with Alex once again.
All right, Alex. You all right?
Mm-hmm. The plan of Baltimore just came up, abruptly when Grant was discussing about receiving money to kill somebody.
According to Alex, Grant Lewis, the star witness for the prosecution, the person the detectives were sharing bagels with that morning, was hired by an unknown man to kill Heidi. He then brought Alex on board as the muscle.
I know from the client, from the person, emphasized to Grant.
So let's see. Hazel, let's not give up on that husband real quick, because this is getting even more twisted. So apparently, it's what it seemed like, according to what he's talking about now. I'm believing that the husband went and hired 2 guys out of state to unalive his wife, and he came back home and acting like he was the distraught and despair husband, and he was going to collect on their life insurance policy. It kind of makes sense that that's exactly how this played out, especially, like I said, when the parents, they had an inkling that he was involved in her death and that they fought for him to not get that money, or for him to pay out that money to them. That's just a red flag. That's going to be a red flag for me, because family members know, right? Daughters, wives, they talk to their moms. They talk to their mom, they talk to their aunts, they talk to their cousins. Like, women are highly communion individuals, right? We believe in community, especially amongst women, and we love to talk to each other and stuff like that. So even if she probably didn't let her know that there was technically some type of abuse or something, she knew that something was quite off, and it gave a red flag to the family, and they was just like, no, you ain't getting that money. You ain't getting that money. This is what it's looking like. Let's see if it plays out this way.
And Grant emphasized to myself that it needs to look like an accident.
When Alex made it to Baltimore, he had some time to kill before getting further instruction from Grant, so he decided to scope out his victim. He admitted to being the suspicious neighborhood watch guy who spoke to Heidi weeks before her death, as well as trying to break in the night before.
But I do remember her answering the door.
Did you go to the door and talk to her more than once?
It was just that one time.
Just the one time.
After about a month of walking the streets of Baltimore, Alex received the green light from Grant. He broke into Heidi's house and hid behind the front door.
Got off the phone with Grant because the message was, it's gonna happen soon. I ran over there. I hear the red car pull up. Came and was unlocking the door. She opened the door, saw me, panicked. I panicked and rushed at her at the front and, try to muffle her scream. She's clawing at me. She clawed at my lip, scratched my lip. At that point, I had my hand on her mouth and I was holding her throat, crushing her larynx, her throat, trying to kill her. And I just remember eventually she was passing out and losing consciousness. Then I had turned her around and had her, her back was on my back and I was still, choking to make sure that she was dead. So I wasn't sure if she was dead, but I know she wasn't breathing. And I just kept doing it to make sure. And I was still, choking to make sure that she was dead. She then went limp. That's when I had the knife, and to make sure, had cut her. Now, my plan was to just try to get her and still make it look like an accident. Maybe snap her neck or something to look like she fell down the stairs or something. And started wiping down doorknobs, and I pulled some of the doors of the drawers of the dresser ajar.
He then told the detective that the number 1 on the wall was also part of his attempt to mislead detectives. After admitting to killing Heidi as part of a hit organized by Grant, the detectives wanted to hear Grant's side of the story, so they picked him up from the hotel and brought him in for further questioning. They began by telling him the good news, that Alex just confessed.
Grant, you're in the middle of this thing. I'm not in the middle of this thing.
All right. You sent him to Baltimore.
I didn't send him to Baltimore, but I know more about this than I've said. I will work with you in any way that I can, but if I didn't have anything to do with that, with him, what he did as far as committing a murder, what my situation as far as that goes.
That's not the
I just want to know that
After some back and forth, revealing more and more details from Alex's confession along the way, Grant eventually agrees to talk.
Crazy, right?
I lost a lot of people, and it's kind of a side subject, but something about something that made me, think of initially, there's these people out there, and they're hiring people to kill people.
Grant proceeded to explain that he never meant to have anybody killed at all, and that it was all part of an elaborate scheme to raise money to open a nightclub. Grant set up an ad online for professional and discreet house cleaning services.
So somebody contacts you back.
Mm-hmm.
What does he say?
Something to the effect that he was looking for probably a hit or something.
And as a result, one of the only people that come back to you is a guy from here.
Mm-hmm.
And he says...
Yeah, I remember him sending an email where he said, well, I could pay $5,000 up front, and then more afterwards or something for a hit, more or less.
Okay.
And then, and that's basically what we were looking for, was that first set of the down payment, and then we're good to go after that.
Apparently, Grant's intention was to scam people reaching out for hits by taking their down payment and then turning them into the authorities, running off with their money in the process.
He was supposed to go
Yes, Hazel.
to Maryland to talk to this guy and pick up some funds for him for what this guy was looking at as a contract murder. But there was not supposed to be any fulfilling or anything. You get their money and then turn them in.
The detectives believed that Grant was lying about this and that he was merely trying to escape the consequences of the crime that was carried out. Some of you may be wondering, who hired Grant to kill Heidi? The detectives had the same question while speaking to Alex.
Did you meet the guy at some point?
At some point when I called Grant, he had told me
So
that the
was
client
Grant.
wanted to
So
meet
I forgot
me
what the husband
at
name
his
was.
house
Was it
to
Steve?
discuss the plan of how everything would go down. I did meet with the person.
The detective proceeds to bring in pictures of several different men and asks Alex if he can point out the person he met with. Alex immediately eliminates 4 of the pictures and takes a closer look at the final 2. The person that Alex pointed out as the culprit was none other than Stephen Cook, Heidi's boyfriend. Apparently, Steve had offered Grant and Alex $60,000 if they actually carried out Heidi's murder, but neither of them ever saw a dime of that money. Following these interrogations, Steve was arrested for first-degree murder and Grant for conspiracy to commit contract murder.
You know that saying, always trust your first instinct? Well, Baltimore County Police say their detectives followed their gut for 14 years and finally cracked a cold case, a murder, which they revealed today was actually a murder for hire. 11 News reporter Kai Reed is live in the newsroom to put all the pieces together for us. Kai.
Well, Kate, investigators say that their first hunch about the victim's boyfriend, Stephen Cook Jr., turned out to be right. And they say that one of the men that Cook allegedly hired to carry out the murder helped them solve the case. It was April of 2000. 24-year-old Heidi Bernadzikowski was found dead in the Dundalk townhouse that she shared with her boyfriend, Stephen Cook Jr. Investigators say that she'd been strangled and her throat was slit. Police always believed that Cook was behind the murder, but they never proved it, and the case turned cold. Eventually, police did charge someone with the murder, a man named Alexander Bennett. He was charged in January of 2012 after police said they found DNA evidence linking him to the crime. Now, this week, investigators say that Bennett started talking and pointed his finger at Stephen Cook Jr. 14 years after the murder. Cook was arrested at his home in Pasadena this week. Investigators say that when he started planning the murder, he got online and hired two men from Colorado, 35-year-old Grant Lewis, who was the middleman, and Bennett, who police say actually made the trip to Dundalk to kill Bernadzikowski. Detectives believe that it was all about money for Cook. They say that he planned to cash in a $700,000 insurance policy that he had taken out on Bernadzikowski just before she was murdered. Neighbors in Pasadena who didn't want to be identified.
Now, here's the thing. I thought that they had already gotten married, and that's why they had the joint life insurance. So it makes the reason why the family, her family, enacted this, what was it called? The Slave Act on the life insurance policy, because you're not even willing to marry this woman before you get a life insurance policy with her. Y'all going to get a joint life insurance policy, but there is no wedding in sight. Y'all not married yet. That's what made them their red flags go up and believe that, you know, that he was definitely involved. And now it definitely makes sense, because it does not make no sense to be getting a life unless that's a conversation with them that they're not trying to get legally married on, you know, in the courts. They want a common law marriage, which is not even, doesn't really exist anymore. But if that's how they want to live, if that was the conversation, I can understand that. But that's not even the conversation. It's like, you're not even married to this woman, but you asking for a joint life insurance policy that's going to average up to at least what hers was $700 and his was $900. So $700,000 a week before this incident occurred makes perfect sense now. Slayer rule. Thank you, Miss Jalen. Slayer rule makes perfect sense. What a evil son of a gun.
Identified said that Cook seemed like an ordinary guy who often calls police to complain about loud noises and disruptions in the neighborhood.
Once they were faced with charges, Alexander Bennett made a plea deal that required him to testify against Grant and Stephen. While behind bars awaiting trial, Steve had met a cellmate, struck up a conversation with him, and ultimately tried to solve one of his problems the only way he seems to know how, by hiring a hitman. He tried to convince his cellmate to kill Grant, who was in the same facility. The cellmate didn't hesitate to tell the authorities when he had the chance, and agreed to wear a wire during another conversation with Steve.
Let me talk to him. I got to talk to him. Hey, Steve. Come here. You got a problem. There's two nurses in here. What the is name? Okay. Let's talk about this later.
This operation worked, and Steve was charged with witness intimidation and attempted murder. Putting those charges aside, Steve's trial for Heidi's murder began. During the trial, Steve's defense attorney argued that the entire case against him was circumstantial, and that there was zero evidence that he hired someone to kill Heidi through the internet. In fact, during the investigation back in 2000, the detectives didn't even check Steve's computer for evidence. It simply wasn't as common to look through computers for evidence during that time period. The defense's alternative theory for why Alex had killed Heidi was that they had met in a chat room online, and after flying to Maryland and being met with unrequited love, he snapped. They said one of the reasons that this made more sense was because of this crime scene photo. The defense asked the jury if Alex's story was true, that he was given a key from Steve and had jumped Heidi when she arrived home. then why was her bag and keys neatly placed on the desk? The only piece of evidence that the state's entire case relied on, Steve's attorney argued, was testimony from the killer himself, Alex Bennett. During the trial, cameras were not allowed, but audio recordings were. And when Alex was asked by the defense why he decided to change his initial story, he said that he now felt it was the right thing to do.
I wanted to be a human being. I wanted to give a family some type of peace. I wanted to have faith enough and to grow up into a man and to accept and take responsibility for what
I mean, I understand why Steve's defense attorney will tell them to point it right back on the actual killer, because it's like, listen, you're listening to the killer and expecting him to, quote unquote, tell you the truth, as if this is not trying to help him or he's not trying to get a plea deal. But at the end of the day, I don't really think it's going to work for the defense attorney, because of the simple fact is that these men lived in a whole complete different state. They had no business and no reasons to be down in Maryland outside of someone summoning them to come to Maryland, right? So it's not like they even lived in Maryland. Now, from what I know, they were homeless in Colorado. They weren't homeless in Maryland. They were arrested for the last scam thing that they were doing in Colorado. They didn't have no records in Maryland. So that's one of the reasons why that the defense attorney is not going to win on the behalf of Steve, because these men don't have nobody else or nothing, like a job or anything, to link them to why they was in Maryland at that time, right? Then, yes, it was poor on the officers' part that they didn't, because they thought that Steve was he was a suspect, but they didn't really investigate into him. Steve had already washed everything on his computer. So they lost that, right? All that evidence and stuff, because they didn't pay attention to that. But they didn't know that they needed to look for that, because initially they didn't think this was a hit for hire situation. They just thought it was just a homicide. So that's why they wasn't looking to check his phone records or check his computer, his emails and stuff like that. However, to confirm that what Alex is saying is correct, is to look or get or I don't know, subpoena Craigslist and see if there were ever a ad that was put out there by Alex Grant and the other guy. Was there an ad at that time? And did what's his name, Steve, did he respond to that ad? They could subpoena Craigslist for that. They're going to keep those type of records. So that will blow the defense attorney's case right out the water, because that means that Alex Grant is not lying. Yes, somebody reached out to us through Craigslist, and now you see it was Steve, and then everything else is going to play into that. But let's go on. Let's see what happens.
I did.
Alex proceeded to explain his side of the story, but this time in front of the jury. To combat Alex's testimony, the defense told the jury this narrative, that Steve was the mastermind behind Heidi's death, was merely fabricated because without it, Alex would have no way out of a life sentence. The state argued that the motive for Steve killing Heidi was greed. It all went back to the insurance policies purchased right before Heidi's death. The couple had one red Honda Civic between them, which was owned by Heidi. They weren't married, had no children, had virtually no valuable belongings, and Steve worked part-time at a Lowe's. Basically, they argued that there was nothing to insure. So why would Steve want these large insurance policies unless it was to line his pockets? The defense, however, found this sentiment to be ridiculous, and Steve addressed it during his testimony.
We were going to start a family, we were going to have children, and I wanted to make sure that there was enough money for Heidi in case I died. Heidi then asked me if it was all right if she could get $700,000 worth of life insurance. And I said, fine.
Apparently, just days before Heidi's murder, she had pushed through some documents for the life insurance policy. Steve's defense inquired why she would do something like that if she was truly planning to leave.
Mr. Cook, you keep saying that you and Heidi are going to get married, but we've heard from other individuals that she was thinking about leaving you.
I've never heard anything like that till now.
Now, Steve, you've heard through testimony that you arranged for Heidi's murder via the internet. Did you do that?
Not at all. No, I didn't have anything at all to do with Heidi's murder.
Why are you testifying?
I'm testifying because I want my family and friends, and I want Heidi's family and friends to know the truth.
Both sides rested their case, and after a day and a half of deliberations from the jury, they had reached a verdict. Stephen Cook was found guilty for the first-degree murder of Heidi Bernadzikowski. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years for the attempted murder of Grant Lewis. A jury also found Grant Lewis guilty for the first-degree murder of Heidi, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Due to Alexander Bennett's plea deal, rather than life, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
That was a hard one. I truly believe that they all deserve life in prison without parole because they was all involved in this woman's unaliving. It had everything to do with money, right? This woman didn't hurt nobody. She wasn't an evil person. She didn't do nothing. Y'all just literally just wanted money. Every single last one of you. But I understand. He took a plea deal. He told the truth. And they was able to get more people that was involved in this incident. And this is why he got 30 years. They got life in prison. But like I said, shout out to this story is sad. And, rest in peace to the ones who have lost their life. But definitely shout out to the parents, right? Like, oh my God, the parents knew what time it was. And they were not playing games, like even if they could not get you with the courts, they like, you're not gonna come up off of my daughter's life, dude. You're not gonna come off over you taking my daughter's life or being involved in that. And they sensed it from the beginning, and they were right. Their instinct was right. I find it funny how the cops was trying to play it off to the news reporter that they always thought that it was actually Steve. No, you didn't, because you didn't do any due diligence with him. He was the number one suspect, as most people are in the beginning. The closest person will be the suspect or the initial suspect. And then you have to wean them out when all the evidence start coming together. But they didn't do their due diligence at all, right? They didn't check to see if it was any real motive or why there could have been a possible motive for Steve to do that. They let all that slide. They didn't check his phone. They didn't check his computer. They didn't check any emails, right? They didn't do anything. They literally believed that he just found his wife as a victim of a horrible crime. Or, well, I'll say girlfriend, because that wasn't his wife. His girlfriend as a horrible crime. So that's why that case went cold for 11 years. And it's sad because no justice happened until 14 years later. He got to live her life. Those two guys got to live their life. He was able to go remarry with money that he didn't have. Remember, they said that he worked part-time at Lowe's. Again, why are y'all both getting policies that is $900,000 and $700,000 with you a part-time employee at Lowe's, right? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, the amount your life assurance is it's not even half at what your salary is at your job, right? So it did look like a come up from the start. And I'm just glad that in this case, justice was served, even though it's still not a victory because a life was lost. And even with all the cases, a life was lost. So to me, it's never really a true victory, but we do the best that we can with what we have. All right. But I want to say shout out to everyone. Those are the 3 cases that I have for you today. And I truly appreciate everyone who was able to rock out with me for as long as you did. Please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. It keeps my videos in the algorithm. It keeps this channel growing. And shout out to everybody who was giving great commentary and discussion in the chat. As you know, I always truly appreciate you when you could do that. As long as we keep it cute, cordial, and respectful, everyone is welcome here. So I will be back. Today is Wednesday. I will be back on Friday with 3 more cases for you guys. So I definitely hope that you look out for that. You'll get a notification, and I hope that you enjoy it. Please go on and have a great, safe, and lovely Wednesday. And I will see you guys on Friday. Talk to you later, guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.